I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So as more people arrive, we can welcome them, and I'll put some extras. Sure. I'll put some extras over here, and maybe they can grab them on the way in. So I think this is our first learners Minyan of this year, of this fall anyway. I probably need one. As we start out Simchat Torah, and so I thought I'd start our curriculum with an important but somewhat misunderstood prayer sometimes, the Shebeirach. So if you've got the text here, but if you want to grab your Siddur, you can see that it's on page 371, and we'll talk about why that's important. But I've got the original, at least not the original, but the Mishkan Tefillah original, meaning the full text of the Shebeirach. And we read this, or a version of this, on Saturday mornings. Shebeirach Rabbeinu Rabbeinu Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov Rivka Rachel Leah Yivarech et Chafkulim. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, blessing those who are ill. And then it goes on. Kadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleichem V'Chalei Mamu Rabbatam Chazikam V'Yishlach Lahem V'Yirav V'Lav V'Moshe Mami Yishamayim V'Mut HaNefesh V'Mut HaGuf Hashla B'Agla V'Zman Kariv V'Mar Amen. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. Amen. So that is an adaptation of what would be sort of the original, or pieces of the original of the Shebeirach. The language itself originates from the Middle Ages. A great deal of our prayers having to do with mourning, having to do with healing, originate from that time. So it's not like it's been with us since the temple times. There's been aspects that originate in terms of healing and things like that. The first spontaneous prayer in the Torah is El Na Rafana Allah, please God heal her. So there is sort of this idea early on in our Torah that God does heal, or God can provide that kind of blessing. So what originated in Jewish liturgy was that the Shebeirach was said on Saturday mornings during a Torah service. You pray for those who were sick. You ask God to bless in some way those who are ill. Here at Temple Israel, if we're doing one Aliyah Torah reading, we do it after that. If we're doing more than one Aliyah, it's always for the final Torah reading, for the final Aliyah. So in Orthodox congregations, it's after the sixth Aliyah, before the seventh Aliyah, meaning the same thing, before the last ones. Whichever the last Aliyah is, right in the middle of reading the Torah, we want to focus on this. The other thing that's important to note is that Reform Judaism added a Shebeirach prayer to the Friday night service as well, even though from a liturgical rubric point of view, it originally belonged only in Saturday mornings, because Saturday mornings was when Torah services are built. In Reform Judaism, at least classical Reform Judaism, moved the Torah service sometimes to the Friday night service. They added it there, and then even those who do not participate in that classical Reform tradition still provide a Shebeirach, and it's sort of up to the rabbi or whomever to decide when to say it. The idea is that the reason why it was in the Torah service is because that's a point where we're very communal. It's a point where we're praying. It's a point where we're doing important things. And so here tonight, you'll see that we do it in the middle of the Tefillah, the Amidah. We're in that same sort of zone where we're feeling close to God. Classically, it was offered separately for men and women, of course, but Reform Judaism, which is more inclusive, said everybody and everything, but there may be adjustments with grammar or wording depending on which shul you go to, which denomination you're in. Again, from a traditional point of view, when we would say Hu Yivarech et HaCholim, meaning bless and heal those who are ill, and ask the congregation, the names that would be submitted would be in Hebrew. They're Hebrew names, but of course in Reform Judaism, not everybody has Hebrew names, remembers their Hebrew names, that doesn't really identify you so much. English names are just as acceptable, or more acceptable, as well as with interfaith couples, with people who might even be within our congregation or friends of our congregation. There are people who are not Jewish that we want to include in that. So we didn't want it to be exclusive, meaning there are plenty of people without Hebrew names that need our prayers for healing. So Reform Judaism, in its inclusivity and egalitarianism, all of that. So just say English name. Some congregations say the first name. Some people actually sort of individualize. Some people say first name. Some people say Hebrew name. Some people say the full name. Some people want the whole congregation to know who's sick, right? So you say the full name. Others, can be said very privately, that sort of thing. Some people want that attention. Some people don't. That's why we're always saying, if you feel comfortable, there's no mitzvah or obligation of having to say a name of someone that you're thinking of. If you'd like to do it, great. And it's up to that person if they'd like to be on the Refuah Shema list, if they'd like to be on that list or not, for privacy reasons or all those sorts of things. So we want to be very respectful of that. Originally, of course, it was, I'm not sure, I apologize for this weird typo here, but the Oled that I was talking about, the person who would come up to read the Torah would be the one who would pray on behalf of someone. As you can see in our Mishkan Tefillah, there is a Shebeirach for doing an aliyah, meaning that someone who's coming up to the Torah, there's a prayer for them, or you can offer a prayer to somebody else. It should sort of allow us to recognize our own powerlessness in the face of illness, right? That at a certain point, there is not much that we can do. There are things that we can do, and I emphasize that, right? We want to be able to show that we can visit, make sure they get to their medical facilities and that sort of things. We can do things, but at a certain point, there is some powerlessness of humanity in the face of illness, and that's why Judaism calls upon the divine to intercede. And so it shouldn't be offered casually. It's an important and meaningful prayer. And like we said, traditionally it was for fellow Jews, but then the reason why the Orthodox said, look, we don't need it, is because during the Amidah, the daily Amidah, there is a prayer that is Rifa'im, and heal us. So that's sort of like a communal idea. But again, that would just be those who'd be reciting the Amidah, not those outside, not those who couldn't come to temple, not those who were not Jewish. So again, we wanted to make sure that it is perfectly communal and understandable. So traditionally, you can offer a Shebeirach during the Torah service, not just for people who are ill, but maybe those who are in need of extra blessing, extra prayers, newborns, mothers of newborns, soon to be wed. There's all kinds of traditions where asking God to bless us with strength and fullness of body and spirit don't necessarily stay within illness. So that's something to remember. It's sort of a lost tradition, but and there are other prayers that have replaced some of these things, but something to remember that, if there's someone who just needs a little, and that's why I always say, right, it's not just physical illness, right? Mental, anguish, emotional pain, spiritual pain, all those sorts of things count in Judaism. If there's someone who's, hurting in some way, maybe not obviously, right? There's There's all kinds of things that we don't see on the inside, and Judaism recognizes that as being appropriate in invoking the Shebeirach. Another thing to do is, as I said, it's expansing for those who are in need of healing. If someone's going through some trial or sorrow, right? But we should also remember it can be one in happiness and celebration. You can offer a Shebeirach for a bar bat mitzvah. You can offer a Shebeirach for a forthcoming marriage or the birth of a child. Asking God to bless you with fullness of body and fullness of spirit doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong, right? It can be in an approach of something great for you. So there are revisions and adjustments and things like that in terms of Shebeirachs for certain happy occasions as well. So again, I want to make sure that we don't narrow the scope that, should we say the Shebeirach, should we not say the Shebeirach? It's one that you shouldn't do casually, but it's also one that you shouldn't just do for someone who's in the hospital. Right? There's plenty of good and challenging aspects in our lives which this prayer was invented for, was created for. You may see that from time to time, that when, not necessarily here, but if you're in another temple and someone comes up for an aliyah or something like that, and they're offering Shebeirach, there's nothing wrong with it. Well, that's appropriate. Yes? Shebeirach is the one who blessed. So, the one who blessed. So, when we say the Shebeirach, right, we're saying, in casual speak, right? Shebeirach is the recognizable name of the prayer, but it is the beginning of the prayer, right? So, may the one who has blessed our ancestors, me, who, Shebeirach, who has blessed Abraham, Isaac, right? That sort of thing. Shebeirach. Okay, it's a great question. Please feel free to. Yeah.
More understandable and why it could be said in so many different
Yes, and if you look to the words themselves, thank you, David. We're good. If you look to the words themselves, it's very vague, right? May the one who blessed our ancestors bless us, right? Provide us with rufat shlema, rufut haguf, right? Renewal or fullness of spirit or fullness of body. Not necessarily a negative thing, right? It's very sort of vague. So very good to sort of hey Rob. Yeah. So it's good to pay attention to the wording and then the accents for that. Thank you. I also wanted to mention, in case anybody wants to, right? Thank God for baby sleeping through the night. That's a great Shebeirach. I'm currently hoping for. Or a child's college graduation or a job promotion. I mean, you get the idea, right? I want you to be able to take from this lesson that the Shebeirach is a prayer that you can expand and say it. It's a wonderful thing to say. It's not just before surgery. It can be before something great, right? May you go into this great moment with fullness of body and fullness of spirit. May the one who blessed our ancestors bless you at this time. It's really much appreciated. Abram said a nice little thing. She said, the public recitation of this prayer is often a moment in which the community comes to know itself. It allows its members to testify to God's power in their lives. When we know each other's souls through the prism of Torah, we truly experience Sinai anew. Again, why it revolves around the Torah service, right? The Torah, reading of the Torah is extremely communal, all right? It's not just that you need to on the market days. It's always read when everyone could hear it. That's the point when you choose to focus on this prayer, right? Because it is a moment for us to all realize through the lens of Torah and through the lens of communal understanding that we can experience each other's vulnerabilities. And as we said earlier, right, there is a helplessness, there is sort of a certain point where there's not much that we humans can do, right? We leave it to the body, if you want to say, we leave it to fate, if you want to leave it to God, however you interpret that, right? It's a vulnerability in us, and it's important that we recognize this. It's a humbling moment for us. So increasingly, the Shebeirach moves into other settings, which I think is a good thing. As chaplains, not just Jewish chaplains, but for our chaplains at Westminster and in the hospitals, I go and I teach them, and I train them. If you want to say a prayer, here's a good prayer to say. And they're able to do it in transliteration or in English to the Jewish patients, doctors and nurses, social workers. When I worked as a chaplain before surgery, we'd all hold hands, and it'd be a good thing to say in those moments. You don't have to be inside the synagogue, and you don't have to be during reading Torah in order to say it. It's been more expensive in that way. Again, I think that's a very good thing that we're doing. As Reformed Jews, as I said, we place it near the tefillah. Some people do it before silent prayer. Some people do it after, depending on. That sort of autonomy of the rabbi is very big because it never belonged there in the first place. So we have the ability to make this informed choice to say we're going to put the Shebeirach somewhere in our Friday night service. But you could say it in the beginning or the end; it doesn't matter. So I place it for sermon and silent prayer at the end of the tefillah, because we're just getting to all these prayers where we get to finally be praying for the individual things. Some people do it before Aleinu. It's up to the rabbi or the Shliach Tzibor, the service leader. So I couldn't talk about Shebeirach without our friend Debbie Friedman, right? The Debbie Friedman Shebeirach has become iconic. In fact, if you Google Shebeirach, it's very hard to get anything else. It's very hard to see past those YouTube videos, the lyrics and the stuff of Debbie Friedman. Now, I want to mention that there are many compositions of the Shebeirach. Some of them are very lovely, but Debbie Friedman has surpassed them all, let us say, in the Reform movement. So much so that in Mishkan Tefillah, the words to Debbie Friedman's composition of Shebeirach made it into the Siddur. And people don't realize how, what we would say, controversial that might be, right? It doesn't happen very often that a particular composition of a prayer makes it into the Siddur. Certainly there are adaptations that are inserts or whatever it is, but it's not like we see, Dan Klepper's or Jeff Klepper's Shalom Rav with the verses in the chorus or something like that. The fact that Debbie Friedman's Shebeirach made it into the Siddur was a point of contention with many cantors. It was a bold choice to put in, but the fact that it is in there matched where the Reform movement was. And as I always teach, if you want to know what Jews are doing at a certain time, look to the prayer book. If you want to know what they're believing, if you want to know what they're saying, where their things are, where their views are, look to the prayer book. And so our prayer book will be remembered as an era in which the Shebeirach was said by the majority of Jews in this particular composition. That's not to say it's not done elsewhere. We do the Lisa Levine, Hear Our Prayer from time to time, which I really like. On Saturday mornings, I prefer to the original prayer, just in just a chant in Nusach, in order to expand that, because again, I want to make sure, as our members, to be as informed as possible that there is more to the Shebeirach than just Debbie Friedman. Debbie Friedman's interpretation is beautiful and incredible, but it is just one interpretation. So I want us to make sure that we know that. Yes, Beth?
And that would only be in the Reform movement, I'm assuming
Yes.
Debbie's in the Orthodox conservative.
No, so certainly not. It is possible that certain autonomous conservative shuls may use it from time to time, but not likely. Most conservative and Orthodox, or the majority, don't use musical instruments in their worship, and so they have very different kinds of compositions that are more able to do just by voice and acapella and that sort of thing. Not that this isn't; you could do that as well, but no, this is very strongly in the movement, the Reform movement. And so if you look at her lyrics, right, it takes some of the pieces of the original, just like any other composition would, right, and provides some English to it, right. May the source of strength, meaning the divine, who blessed the ones before us, meaning the ancestors that we just mentioned. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. She inverts it a little bit, right? And that it's not just we're just looking for God's blessing, but it works for us to bless ourselves and bless each other, right? She invokes refuah shlema from the original, renewal of body, renewal of spirit. So it's a really obviously important composition, or at least it was, and still is in the Reform movement. And so the fact that it is there in our Siddur is pretty amazing. And I put this little paragraph, which I don't have to read out loud for you because we got to start our services soon, but how Debbie's song has helped to expand the ideas of the Shebeirach in the ways that we were just teaching about. The ideas of healing services, those came out of her understanding, being able to sing at the bedside of dying patients and that sort of thing. All of that sort of came out of this movement of which Debbie took the lead in terms of moving away from the decorum of just sitting in the pews and watching the chazan or the cantor, sing the operatic with the organ and all that sort of stuff, but an interactive aspect of all of us getting involved. And so if you ever saw Debbie Friedman in concert, what she would always do is she would lead one Shebeirach for everyone and by herself. She would ask people not to sing, and then they would sing the second. And again, it's all about the process that she invoked. But I hope that we're able to see through this learner's Minyan that there's a great deal more than just those 2 lines that we see in the Mishnah and Tefillah that have been so powerful. So before we take a break and go to our Kabbalat Shabbat, any other questions about Shebeirach? Rob?
Is she still alive?
She passed away, unfortunately. She did. She passed away, but amazingly, again, another controversial move is that the Hebrew Union College Cantorial School in New York was named after. The reason why it was controversial was because she wasn't a cantor. So, but her influence in music was so great that it is now the Debbie Friedman School of Music. So again, the movement has its own ideas about those who have lifted our music and placed them in that sort of status. So yeah, she did pass away. And when I was in seminary in Jerusalem, we did a service honoring her passing away. Her music has meant a great deal to so many people. So she is still remembered, as well as so many others who helped transform the movement. Any other questions about Shebeirach or healing prayers or any sort of anything else that comes to mind? Okay, that good. I love that. All right, so then let's take like 2 minutes and then we'll do Kabbalat Shabbat. Sound good? Thank you, friends, for your questions.